Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo, and I'm the head of news for the Cradle. As usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and social media manager for the Cradle, Sima Itaim, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmeen Narwani. Before we start, we want to thank you for sharing, for liking, for subscribing this podcast, and please check out our Patreon where you can support the Cradle. We are 3 days removed from the assassination of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah in a brutal attack in a heavily populated area of Beirut, in which Israeli jets dropped anywhere between 80 and 100 heavy bombs provided by the United States, destroyed several buildings, and killed Hassan Nasrallah, killed an IRGC official, and leveled this area of the city. Lebanon has been under a very intense attack over the past couple of weeks. It started in a way with the pager attacks, right? When Israel bombed set off about 5,000 communication devices across the entire country. It started to conduct strikes deeper into the country, targeting, and what they like to say, Hezbollah positions, leaders, etc. Climaxing in a way with this horrific attack. Hundreds of people have been killed just over the past couple of weeks. We're talking about 700 people killed here in Lebanon, thousands injured, up to 1 million displaced across the country. And it's a new world in a way for Lebanon, for the resistance axis, and for Israel as well, because they are obviously turned a page and they have obviously showing the entire world that they no longer have any limits, red lines don't exist. And it seems like everyone and everything is a target. So where does Lebanon go from here? Where does Hezbollah go from here? And what do we make of all of this?
I think more than one thing is true at the same time. We've discussed, all of us, before that, Israel's assassination policy doesn't ultimately, strategically make a difference on
the ground.
But, it doesn't make the blow any easier when it's somebody like Hassan Nasrallah, which is, a man larger than life, really. And, we're not here to do an obituary for him, because I think if people know or want to know more, it's very easy for them to know more. But so we know this. We know this from the time when Secretary General Abbas al-Musawi was assassinated and Nasrallah took his place. And at the time, analysts and media were saying that it's the end of Hezbollah after Abbas al-Musawi was assassinated. And now the media is doing the same thing, and it's simply not true. But that doesn't make the blow easier. And we know this. We know this from Hamas, Ahmed Yassin, Abdulaziz al-Rantisi. We know this from the PIJ, Fatah Shekhafi, people who were always felt to be irreplaceable. The resistance is not built in that way. So that's not really, I think that's not something up for dispute. But I think that, things will change. This brutal attack came after Netanyahu's UN speech, in which he once again proposed the new Middle East and showed the map of the countries of the resistance axis as the curse. And,
Israel and all the normalized nations.
Israel and the normalized nations as the blessing, right? Mm-hmm. With that road.
Yes.
That leads from,
the land route.
The land route. Yeah, and talking about all these new things that come along with an integrated Israel into the region, and Israel and Saudi normalization, and this land route, and this, defeat, supposedly, of Hamas and Hezbollah for the sake of the Western civilized world. I'm not here to discuss, what Hassan Nasrallah means to Lebanon or to Palestine or to the Axis or to many people around the world. But I just want to say one thing before we get into other stuff, which is that we don't need a report or an analysis to tell us that he was at this time assassinated because he refused to separate the Lebanese front from the Gaza front. And, we don't need a report for that. The ABC News came out and said, Israeli officials said that they had to assassinate him because he refused to separate the two fronts. And we Israelis were trying for a very long time to reach a diplomatic solution. He refused. I believe that. Of course, there are many benefits, perceived benefits for Israel to assassinate him. But at this time, when in his last speech, he challenged them directly and said, "You will not be able to return the settlers to the north, and the fronts will not be separated."
Yeah, back to Netanyahu's decision when he was at the UN, it was, the Israelis put out a photo of him making the phone call to kill Nasrallah. And here he was at the UN, not just any time and not just any place. This is the body where international law is made. This is where the UN Charter was devised, to underpin sovereignty and territorial integrity as an absolute, foundation of the new order. But he did this photo op, and it showed that Netanyahu, who was there at the time where all world leaders had congregated, was above them. Here he is sitting in the seat where international law is created, with every world leader there, and he, the chosen one, decides to do something this obnoxious and in violation of all treaties and conventions and law. It is, again, mad strategy. Israel going to friends and foes alike and showing them that there's nothing they can't get away with. But in terms of, what's changed, I think the most important thing that will have changed, that we will see in the days ahead, is until now, so until 11 months into this war, the entire resistance axis had sought to get Israel to stop its war on Gaza, at the same time seeking to halt any escalation into regional war. That has changed. There's no longer any attempt going to be made as Israel, comes like a raging bull at its neighboring countries. So that strategy, while it worked for a long time, as Israel was slowly taking incremental hits during these 11 months, Israel decided that it needed to take the initiative and needed to take the lead to change the dynamic of this war, which it did. It did very successfully, although entirely illegally. But the outcome of this will actually release the Axis from that hard strategy that they cleaved to for 11 months, which was do what you must, but don't let this escalate. Now that's off the table. And Israel, really in 2 weeks took the lead entirely. They were being led before, Now they took the lead, but, like Nasrallah and others have said in the Axis, you win some, you lose some. The important thing is who comes out victorious at the end of the war. And they have calculated from the beginning that this is going to be a long, protracted war, a war of attrition, which Israel cannot sustain because that is the nature of Israel's military strategy from day one of the existence of the state. There are several narratives that have emerged. One is the narrative that Hamas and Hezbollah are now defeated. Please, folks, don't even buy into this for a second. I say this because here at the Cradle, we reported in, numerous podcasts since we got this think tank report, several think tanks, which CNN reported on, that Hamas has 24 battalions and 21 are operational. And the other 3 are in the process of regrouping. So, and Hamas has a leader, Yahya Sinwar, as you saw very swiftly after the killing of the previous leader, Ismail Haniyeh. If Sinwar is out of the picture, there will be someone else. Same with Hezbollah. I mean, we have heard that the entire leadership of Hezbollah has already been replaced and decided upon, though that has not yet been confirmed by Hezbollah. But this is what we've heard from Hezbollah's closest allies. This is the nature of an institution. This is not a ragtag guerrilla group. This is not the asymmetrical warfare of the 1980s and the 1990s. This is a whole different era. So, as Israel says, we cut off the head. And there's 1,000 people waiting for these positions. Interestingly, people who are more qualified than ever before because of the Syrian theater and what that did in Hezbollah's organizational and military transformation. I mean, operationally, in terms of being battle tested, in terms of reconnaissance, in terms of communications, the Syrian battle brought up an entire generation of fighters into potential leadership roles. But, there's too many of them and too few seats. So the seats will never remain empty. Anyone who says Hezbollah and Hamas have been defeated is, should wait a few weeks.
He's trying to push a narrative.
And there was also, to what you were saying about the Syrian theater, which is very true. And I mean, none of us here know exactly what happened. We may not know for a long time, but this idea also of, the communications being infiltrated and to what extent that is true and how long that's been going on and, the pager attacks and walkie-talkie attacks up until today and months prior to that. There's reports now have been going around that, Hezbollah's involvement in the Syrian war, which, was well justified, as we all agree, was what made them vulnerable to this infiltration. And I'd like to know what, your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I know the bigger an organization gets, right, the more facilities it occupies, the more production lines it has, the more rank and file that are doing basically civil types of jobs for the organization, the more opportunity there is for infiltration. I think when the pager attack happened, that was the first thought. Then it became, no, it's technology. I think all of these things are combined. I don't think anymore that there's like some super mole, because it's very clear that even a super mole would not know the locations of each and every one of these people at all times of the day and night. I do think that since October 8th, when Hezbollah and Israel got into direct confrontation, that Israel has been able to use the facilities and technology of how many countries?
I mean, at least 59 intelligence agencies around the world at Israel's disposal. So that's why this narrative that one guy gave them up, when it's like you said, this combined effort.
And because Lebanon is still a small country, and because there's been very accelerated activity since October 8th, it's harder to hide the movements, right? So if you manage to identify one and then very carefully follow one who is now in way more meetings, right? Because they don't communicate in traditional ways anymore, certainly the commanders of the organization, then you are going to lead to another one, another one, another one. So I believe that through not some sci-fi technological device that we've never heard of, but rather through intense reconnaissance with the help of pretty much everybody, the most technologically advanced countries, that they were able to slowly map out all these commanders, all the places they went, when the most important ones were coming together in one place, therefore identifying the way, way, way deep underground command centers, etc. But as we've also seen, Hezbollah hasn't missed a beat. It does continue at the same level prior to this assassination to hit Israel in sensitive areas. But now, the big question is, will this change? Because for sure, it's a war now, So, of course, avoiding the regional war, the old thing, doesn't exist anymore. Now we're in a war. Iran has made a lot of comments just in the last day or two that this cannot go unanswered, and have suggested that they will be part of the answer and that they will never leave the resistance alone. At the same time, Iran does consider that every part of the axis is fully capable still, which means why intervene when its partners are still capable? And this is something that the Lebanese and supporters of the resistance here and others will be debating. Well, Iran should get involved, Iran should get... No, Hezbollah is not neutered in any shape or form. And let's remember that Israel has hit thousands of targets in what it calls its target-backed, that it's quietly amassed over these 11 months. Israel claims to have hit them all, but Israel can only hit what it knows. And Hezbollah has only shown its low-level munitions, right? Its older munitions. And those can be hit. The question is, has Israel any idea about the sophisticated missiles, the guided missiles, the ballistic missiles, which Hezbollah has not used yet? Because they have to shoot off these things for them to get, whether it's heat detection, etc., to get a lock on where this missile was fired from.
But here's the thing, about Israel's intelligence gathering capabilities that they've displayed over the past couple of weeks that they're nothing to be scoffed at, first of all. I think the Pager's attack was more than enough evidence. Killing Nasrallah, I think, also serves as evidence that they, this report that you're referring to, Sima, about the Syrian theater kind of opening up Hezbollah to be infiltrated, I guess. They talk specifically about the amount of data that Israel has collected over the years. They talk about Unit 9900, saying that they have, this is programmers, I guess, writing algorithms that see through terabytes of visual images that are collected by the drones of Israel, of the intelligence agencies that are just constantly being fed. So they know, right? Like all of a sudden they identify an operative, could be a low-level operative, could be mid-level, could even be, senior level. The moment, that they change the routine, what does that mean? Where is it going? They are constantly looking at Lebanon. They are constantly looking at everywhere, right? They're listening. They're listening through devices. They're listening through phones, through smart TVs, through car radios. Again, they put bombs into people's pockets without them even knowing.
If you remember, in 2006, they actually tried to assassinate Said Hassan at least 2 or 3 times and failed. And it was actually since then that they changed their approach to intelligence gathering. And so then the Syrian war started and we went through that time, and that was when they had changed their approach. And a lot of things in that report about how, their intelligence gathering was boosted,
There's this attempt in Western media since the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah at first, trying to sow division. We're all kind of... we all saw the reports talking about an Iranian mall that we hear about, it wasn't Syrians, it was the Lebanese, it was somebody, called and said Hassan is on his way, etc., etc.
But while that may apply absolutely to its success in assassinating most of the main heads of Hezbollah, it doesn't apply to the Hezbollah's military capabilities. Again, because Hezbollah has not shown the most of its newer stuff that it has, the Israelis are unable yet to identify those. And, a lot of things will change within the Axis now. And we don't know what any of those things are. But, Naim Qassem, the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah, spoke just an hour or so ago, and he made clear that what we are doing on the battlefield today, is still the minimum of our capabilities. It's part of the reason why when people were saying, why didn't you escalate against Israel all along these 11 months? They understood that they didn't want to show those. They didn't want to show the launch pads for these things. They didn't want to provide the heat detection and the signals, that recon can capture on these things. They're saving it for when they needed to do. And we have to, Israel is winning in terms of win and loss in the battle scene only. Israel in the last 2 weeks is winning the PR war, but Israel is all about public relations in its warfare, whereas the Axis is all about strategy. Once that locks into your brain, you will understand so many things working backward from new information. So, now the question is, what is Hezbollah waiting for? If it's only using its minimal capabilities, has so much more capabilities, it's established its command, its top command, it's ready to go. What is it waiting for? One of the things it's possibly waiting for is a ground invasion. In which they can, the Hamas and the Palestinian resistance took Israeli prisoners in which to exchange, but we're, for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli detention. But in this case, you could have up to 10,000 Israeli soldiers in Lebanon, which gives Hezbollah a massive, massive hand. And that may be what it's waiting for, and maybe keeping things on a low boil because the Israelis, especially Netanyahu, etc., are just bursting with confidence right now, bursting with bravado, which may in fact, and they're talking about today, some have already said the ground war has already started. They've started to infiltrate the border. We don't know if that's true. We're not hearing.
They're saying they've entered Hezbollah tunnels as well.
Whatever they're saying. The point is, the more the merrier. In Hassan Nasrallah's last speech, he said, you want to launch a ground war? Please come. You have no idea how we're ready for that. So this would be maybe part of the low boil. I want to go into something. There's a lot of propaganda here. So Israel's thing, don't forget, is always a PR war. It's not just for its domestic constituents. It's to amplify and power project in this region that it considers so dangerous for it, and globally, so nobody questions Israel's action or takes steps against it. So seeding propaganda, for sure, dividing the Lebanese population by seeding paranoia, by seeding, about spies, about who's working in opposition, about security. These are going to be absolutely the kinds of things we're going to be hearing. We are going to see reams of, U.S. articles where they seem to have the intimate details of every Israeli operation. And the commandos came in, they snuck in at 12:04 from this. We're going to see that kind of detail that basically is handed to these stenographer journalists by intelligence assets of Western agencies and Israeli ones.
Right.
You've got to take these with a pinch of salt. It is part of the PR war. It is part of the, we're in the driver's seat right now that Israel wants to keep going for as long as possible because a response is coming. And one of these narratives is, and that we've even heard in Lebanon, is that the Iranians sold Hezbollah out, okay? They sold them out in exchange for some nuclear deal, from sanctions relief, et cetera, et cetera. Let me just say something, okay? I'm just going to give you an example that is rock solid, 100% proven. So Imad Boughnier, who was the mastermind of a lot of Hezbollah's military strategies in his lifetime and after he was assassinated, was killed in a car bomb in Damascus in February 2008. In the immediate aftermath of that assassination of Imad Boughnier, the most senior military commander of Hezbollah, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Mike McConnell, misdirected reporters, and this was reported widely. He said, in quote, "There's some evidence that it may have been internal Hezbollah. It may have been Syria," okay, which immediately seeded doubt, paranoia, suspicion within this region, within the Axis, within potentially Hezbollah, within potentially Syria. 7 years later, in a series of orchestrated leaks to Newsweek magazine and Washington Post on the same day, articles revealed that the Mournia car bombing came courtesy of a joint operation by the CIA and Mossad, okay, confirmed by the U.S. government and the Israeli government. So 8 years prior, they had said it could have been Hezbollah, it could have been Syria. It's the same thing with the assassination of Rafiq Hariri. It could have been Syria, then it could have been Hezbollah. They did this, all right? So now this information that an Iranian mole provided this intelligence on how to kill Nasrallah and the top Hezbollah command is now being seeded. So you got to disregard that immediately. The U.S. always blames things it does itself on others. For instance, the assassination attempt, which killed 80 people on Ayatollah Mohammad Hussein Fadlallah in Lebanon, which was organized by CIA Director William Casey. He gave an interview on his deathbed, basically, to the Washington Post, where he said that he arranged for Saudi funding for the covert operation using Lebanese militias to do the dirty work, okay? But of course, it wasn't the Americans. For decades, it wasn't the Americans. This is the U.S. Modus operandi. I mean, even, the Americans talk about Hezbollah being the biggest terrorist organization, blaming Hezbollah for the bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon in 1982, and then the U.S. Embassy bombing in 1983. The U.S. Secretary of Defense at the time of the bombings, Caspar Weinberger, told PBS almost 2 decades later, in 2001, quote, "We still do not have the actual knowledge of who did the bombing of the Marine barracks at the Beirut airport, and we certainly didn't that." So it's all part of propaganda to lay the ground for justifying what they do. And it's a lie. It's a big fat lie. Just keep this in mind as events develop.
I mean, it's not a coincidence that as the attack that killed Nasrallah was taking place, the Israeli defense chief was on the phone with his U.S. counterpart. And there's also not a coincidence that apparently there were two airborne early warning and control planes off the coast of Beirut at the time of the attack, in which multiple Israeli F-35 had dropped. All of these
U.S. airplanes. U.S. airplanes support aircraft to back up what they knew was going to be a massive fleet of Israeli fighter jets going to
essentially providing them defense, like us.
Correct.
For any, counterattack. And you also have, in all of the intelligence gathering that we already discussed. Remember, for the past year, we have already seen multiple reports in Western media about the drones overflights of the UK Royal Air Force and the US Air Force across Lebanon on a daily basis, non-stop. So what's happening in Lebanon right now is being conducted by the Israeli army, the Israeli Air Force, but it couldn't be happening
without the Americans and the British.
Just like in Gaza.
And don't forget the biggest British asset in the region is it's Cyprus-based. Basically, it's 2 areas of Cyprus in which the British government has sovereignty over Cypriot areas. And what were started off as British bases have now become joint British-American bases. And this is where they have their reconnaissance center for the entirety of West Asia, listening in on phone calls, eavesdropping, interception of communications, etc., plus also launching operations and devising them, masterminding them. So the British are 100% involved in these things, and these aircraft you're talking about that were in Lebanese airspace just before the bombing, what was a very rare thing. It hadn't happened in a long time. So the Americans are lying, the Israelis are lying. And the question really now lies, I think what probably people want to know is what is maybe our level of confidence, given that we speak to the players, all these players, all day long. What is our level of confidence in what's coming? So,
well, okay, just quickly again to wrap up what we were saying, this idea that like it was an Iranian mole or it was this or that, again, what you were talking about, all the intelligence agencies at their disposal, all the militaries at their disposal. This is like, you don't need a spy when you're tracking someone's movements. And a lot of these leaders, including Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, were in a very small area in the southern suburb of Beirut, Dahi, almost within 2 square kilometers. So how hard is it really? I mean, I'm not downplaying what Israel did or underestimating their capabilities or their superiority, but it doesn't take a genius when you have these leaders in one area throughout the course of the whole war. And if you've been also gathering intel and tracking them maybe possibly for months, just like Hassan Nasrallah, they were also tracking him for months before they decided to exploit the opportunity and decide to assassinate in a time. So whether it's an Iranian mole or someone, I saw a report that someone shook hands with Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and implanted something in his skin. Another one about hard current technology. It doesn't matter, Iranian mole, Lebanese mole, technology. It's a huge, in a way, tactical achievement for Israel. But also, I mean, if the man, didn't want to leave his neighborhood, the commanders wanted to be on the battleground there. They were probably had to meet in person, and so they did. And it's not, that much, it's not rocket science. I mean, they were there, they were being tracked. So going into what comes next, this is an emotional time and everyone needs an emotional response. But you have to remember, if Naim Qassem just said that we are going to continue Hassan Nasrallah's plans, we all want to see hell rain down on, the Israelis, right? But the thing is, we have to remember what the goal of this war is, which is to thwart Israel's goals, and which is to make sure the settlers don't go back to the north. That comes before. And just to be clear, the revenge for the assassination of this larger-than-life man, Hassan Nasrallah, is the end of Israel and no less. So don't expect to see a contained response or a specific operation that is the official response to the assassination of the man that is Hassan Nasrallah, which is not just a military strategist, not just a political commentator, a spiritual leader and a father figure and a source of security and safety for the whole region, actually, and not just this country. So that's, we are going to feel, a lot of people feel very defeated right now. Others are trying to keep the morale high because the reality does not change. And I still say Israel and the U.S. will fail at this new Middle East project, no matter how big these blows are. So whatever's coming, if it's not to the people's desire, doesn't mean that it's not to our benefit.
I think, given that Naim Qassem said we're going to absolutely follow through with the Nasrallah strategies, and it wasn't, many of these are strategies we won't have known about, right? And will not hear about. But just to direct our viewers, if you want to know what Hassan Nasrallah's last speech was about, because it really, really addressed many of the situations in Lebanon today. And I think, his speech was done after the pager terror attack and Israel's daily escalation on Lebanon. So it's very fresh still. Please, look on our YouTube channel at one of our Cradle Bites from last week, which goes through the entirety of Hassan Nasrallah's speech and sums up the key points, because I think it's very important. We should be doing that too, to refresh our memory, because those words are going to ring in our ears and apply to many situations looking ahead. I also want to take this moment to ask our viewers to please become a paying subscriber to Patreon. There's no time that we've needed your support more than now, for many reasons. I mean, some are logistical, some are operational that I don't want to get into, because who knows who's watching. We want to bring more content to you, but our situation is getting more difficult our neighborhoods are filling up. People are basically staying everywhere. 1 million displaced. So some include Cradle employees, Cradle staffers, our social media teams, and others who have also been hit. Their homes have been hit. So please, we really, really do need our viewers to become Patreon subscribers. I appreciate that.
So just to go back quickly to what we're discussing, which is what's next, right, in this war, in the terms of the resistance axis, I believe following the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, we already started to see a bit of the response, first of all, from Lebanon, that over the weekend launched, as it has been doing over the past months, heavy rocket barrages towards the north of Israel, one of which reportedly caused a serious security incident among military leaders in Israel. We don't have the information because Israel, it's very good at censoring what goes out. We also had Yemen launch a ballistic missile that they say was aimed at the Ben Gurion airport as Netanyahu was coming back from the UN. It was shot down. Overnight, there was also a Lebanese ballistic missile fired towards Israel that was also shot down. You have the Islamic resistance in Iraq that has also been intensifying its attacks against Israel, hitting the port of Haifa, hitting certain settlements, but also apparently hitting the Konopo oil field, the U.S. occupation base at Konopo oil field in northeast Syria. So this is kind of not more than what we've seen so far for the past year, but also it's obviously that it's they're coming together in a way, right? These attacks. Do you think we're going to see more of these? Do you think at some point this is actually going to be like the gates of hell open against Israel? Or is it going to be still like just separate fronts?
I'm not sure. That's, as I was saying earlier, I think with the main goal being, emotions aside, the main goal being to thwart their goals and to continue what Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah intended with this support front that was open on 8 October. I can't say where this will go, but these are the support fronts. They will do what they can. And they are all paying the price for standing with Gaza. And Lebanon is under attack with hundreds dead and 1 million displaced and people having lost their homes and people under severe psychological pressure and severe psychological warfare. All of this is the price at the moment for standing with Gaza. Just like the Yemen's Hodeida port was bombed, this is the price for standing with Gaza. So we have to stay aware of what the initial goals are for this war. And again, I just wanted to say something quickly, is that this idea of when is this going to blow up into an all-out war and should it or should it not, or so much talking about Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah should have from day one gone all in on on October 8th, the day they should have stormed the Galilee, they should have gone all in with and all this wouldn't have happened because we would have had deterrence. At one point I thought that too, but then I said both ways Israel's going to rain down hell on you. If you do another October 7 by storming the Galilee, if you bring out all your weapons at the start of the war, you will pay the same price as if you have this strategic patience that we have seen practiced by the Axis. So either way, Israel is going to unleash itself and show its true face because it's fighting an existential war. So, we can speculate all we want. We are not the ones, we are not the commanders in the battlefield. And it's a very emotional time. But what I know is Israel will fail at its goals. That's what I can tell you for now.
I mean, it's already failing at the goals. I mean, come on. It's been, we're a week removed from it being the 1 year anniversary of the genocide in Gaza. Israel has not defeated Hamas. Israel has not recovered all of its captives. Israel has not regained the terrorists. I mean, yes, Gaza is flattened. I feel like I say this every week.
We have to.
Like Gaza is flattened. The civilian population is under extreme duress. This is not a military achievement, right? To go against civilians, to cause terror, to kill children, to starve the entire population of the Strip. It's not a military achievement.
Okay, and it's taking from us the most valuable man in our region and the most valuable in our hearts, Hassan Nasrallah, is also not a military achievement. It's a tactical achievement.
Exactly.
I am not downplaying it, but it is not a military achievement.
It's not. It's not.
It is not.
Like, exactly. What they're doing in Lebanon, and this is actually where it gets, very concerned, honestly, that Israel, over the past year, has managed to do all of this in Gaza with complete impunity. Right? Okay, some countries cut relations, the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, blah, 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 all of these things. People walk out of Netanyahu's speech. It has meaning up to a point, it has a significance, but it doesn't change anything either. So Israel just has been doing it with full impunity. And now they are coming with the very same strategy at Lebanon, right? A UN member state, a country that is allied with the United States, just dropping bombs, just causing terror, killing leaders, right? Hassan Nasrallah, a fixture of Lebanese society for the past 30 years, love him or hate him, even the people, that I have known that never liked Hassan Nasrallah, even they said, this is not how it should have ended for him. This was not right, because it's not right. You cannot just go and bomb a residential neighborhood in an attempt to kill one person, but that's the Israeli strategy, right? What they call the 100 to 1. We can kill up to 100 civilians if it means we kill one commander. In this case, we still don't even know how many civilians they killed. In that attack, the goal here in Lebanon, as we're saying, is to return the settlers to the north.
Well, that's what they claim, but they actually want to disable Hezbollah. And now in the media, they say, they only have 10% firing capability left. And we know that's not true. They're committing massacres in the Baqa, in Hermel, in the south, in Beirut. So no. And just like I said, you can't separate Lebanon from Gaza. You can't separate Lebanon from Hezbollah. They are trying to disentangle Lebanon from Hezbollah. We're not in a war against the Lebanese people. We're just in a war against Lebanon. Hezbollah is an integral part of Lebanon and is found all across Lebanon. You cannot disentangle them. And no, they are not a terrorist organization. So this is a war on Lebanon.
No, the terrorists are the ones that are blowing up, communication devices in people's pockets, no matter if they're in a car, no matter if they're in a plane, no matter if they're with their children. That's terrorism. And what we have seen over the past year is that there's only a very few who would stand up against the actual terrorism, against the actual genociders, and against, the mass murderers. And it is Hezbollah, and it is Hamas, and it is Ansarallah, and it is the Iraqi resistance, and it is, Iran to maybe not an active role, but obviously not support role, right? Because all of these factions, they wouldn't be they wouldn't have the capabilities that they have if it wasn't for the Islamic Republic. But the world doesn't work like that, right? Everyone is a terrorist. Even the Cradle was accused of supporting terrorism just to silence us. Why? Because we stood on the side. We stand on the side of Gaza. We stand on the side of Lebanon. We stand on the side of truth.
Well, Hassan Nasrallah stood up not only to Israeli and U.S. terrorism, but to the agenda they want to impose on the region. And, this, like you said, a lot of people said this isn't how it should have ended for him. And a lot of people are feeling like he was stolen from us too soon. But the fact is, there's a very spiritual dimension to all of this, and you cannot understand Hezbollah without understanding that. But the fact is, it is an honor to be martyred in support of Gaza and being one of the only ones who refused to stand down. Exactly. And that is really, one day people who aren't capable of seeing it from that perspective will see it. It is an honor, okay, because that is the whole path of, exactly. It's indisputable. So as difficult as it is.
Since the day of his death, I've been going back to two quotes that I'm going to paraphrase, but they were from the past couple of speeches. And one of them was after Fuad Shukr was killed. And he said, that obviously this was a huge loss, and that everyone from the organization of Hezbollah knows that they can face their death at any point, right? That martyrdom is their finish line, so to speak. And the other one was after the Beirut attacks, in which he said that some days the victory will be of the enemy. Right? Like we're not going to win every day. They're not going to win every day. This is a long war of attrition.
Yeah.
So I think those are things that are really, that are, I guess, for the colonizing mind, is impossible to understand, right? They think they can just come, kill a leader, and then the movement's going to crumble. It's not, because it's an idea. It's part of your life. So one last thing before we end for this week, and is this statement from the Iraqi resistance in Iraq that falls into the idea, right, of maybe a united front. A few days ago, a leader from the resistance in Iraq, Ali Ahmadi, spoke with a Lebanese newspaper, Al-Akhbar. Well, first of all, that the resistance will be prepared to go, if necessary, to go into Lebanon. He also said we are ready for open war against Israel. And then a very interesting quote. He called the UAE, in particular, the advanced position of the Zionist entity in the Gulf, and said that the UAE will be the first line of fire for the resistance. Now, this obviously goes back to what you were talking about earlier in this episode, Sima, which is Netanyahu standing at the UN with, the blessing and the curse. The blessing being Israel and all the normalized states, the curse being everyone else. So what is the UAE? What are these normalizing states that are, in such friendly relations with Israel? Can we expect for them to become, part of another front in this war? Do you think we're likely to see any of these states be targeted by the resistance? Because, well, in particular with the UAE, we know for a fact that they've been helping Israel, with their commerce and their trade. And, you have Jordan that has been so ready to come to the defense of Israel. You have Saudi Arabia. There was this quote from Mohammed bin Salman a few days ago in which he said, apparently he said...
But he doesn't care about the Palestinian issue.
Like me personally, I don't care, is what he says. So what are they also now looking down the barrel of a gun?
The Iraqi resistance actually, I don't know if you remember the Tower 22 drone attack in Jordan, when the U.S. base was hit in Jordan, and we were under the impression that it was an accident. I still don't believe it was an accident, but it was after then that they were requested to tone things down, and then we saw a decline in attacks against the U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria by the Iraqi resistance. So we've already seen a bit of this, and we might see that go to a next stage. I'm not sure how many operations like that we'd see, or where that would lead, or at what time that would come. But I think it depends where things go. But I think from what we've seen, you might see the UAE or Jordan, being targeted by the Iraqi or Yemeni forces. We might see that, but I don't know at what point. And I think it would be like an exceptional situation.
Or maybe this is just more a warning, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard these warnings from Yemen before.
But Yemen in particular has hit UAE, has hit Saudi Arabia, because it's where the countries wage progress.
I mean, I take Yemen's more seriously. I think with Iraq, they've contributed a lot as a support front and have developed their capabilities throughout the war, like Yemen have. I'm not belittling that, but I take the kind of threat of something like hitting the UAE more seriously from the Yemeni armed forces than I do from the Iraqis. I think a lot of what the Iraqis do, although it's important, a dimension of it is moral support and trying to make a point and trying to, they might do it, but targeting is one thing and actually hitting the target is another thing.
Well, true.
So we might see that. I mean, I really don't know where we're going right now. I'm not going to pretend that we know where we're going.
No, this is a completely,
all I know is that strategically, Israel and the U.S. will fail in what they want for the region. But I don't know how this escalation exactly will pan out. All I know is there's going to be, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. And let's not forget that the escalation, despite, what you always see in Western media when they talk about the escalation now, if Iran retaliates, it's because they're escalating. If Lebanon retaliates, it's because they're escalating. But when Israel comes and bombs, the capital of another country, of a neighboring country, and kills hundreds of people, that's not escalation. That's self-defense. This is what we've been taught. And this is where we will end it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure to share, to like, to subscribe, and to follow us on Telegram and on X, and to check out our Patreon, where our subscribers will be able to listen to an extended version of this podcast, where we will also discuss Israeli plans for the ground offensive in Lebanon and what can we expect of them. So please make sure to check that out. For the Cradle News Roundup, my name is Esteban Carrillo. This week I was joined by Sharmin Nawani and Siman Itai.